Here, you can improve your English with advanced, natural, and meaningful conversations. This episode is for C1 to C2 learners. Listen carefully to Sophia and Daniel. Notice the high-level vocabulary, follow the deeper ideas, and improve your fluency, pronunciation, and confidence step by step. Now, let's start the conversation.
Hi, I'm Sophia.
And I'm Daniel.
Today, we are talking about pressure, fame, and young football stars, especially during the World Cup, where a teenager or a player in his early 20s can suddenly become the focus of an entire nation's hope.
Exactly. And this is one of the most fascinating and emotionally complicated sides of modern football. Young players are not only judged by coaches and teammates anymore, they are judged by millions of strangers, social media accounts, journalists, sponsors, former players, and people who have never experienced that level of pressure themselves.
That is what makes it so intense. A young player may still be discovering who he is as a person, but the world is already trying to define him as a hero, a genius, a disappointment, or the future of an entire country.
Yes, fame arrives before maturity. That is a very dangerous combination. A player might have extraordinary talent, but talent does not automatically provide emotional stability, media awareness, or psychological resilience.
And during the World Cup, everything becomes amplified. One goal can turn a young player into a national treasure. One mistake can make him the target of anger, ridicule, and brutal criticism.
The World Cup accelerates reputation. In club football, a player can grow gradually over a season, but at the World Cup, the global audience is enormous, the emotional temperature is higher, and the judgment is immediate.
It is almost like a young player can become famous overnight.
Exactly. But overnight fame can be psychologically destabilizing. Imagine being unknown to most of the world on Monday, scoring a spectacular goal on Tuesday, and by Wednesday, people are calling you the future of football.
That sounds exciting, but also terrifying.
It is both. Fame is seductive because it offers recognition, admiration, money, and opportunity. But it is also invasive. It changes how people look at you, how they speak to you, and sometimes how you see yourself.
And young players may not have the emotional tools to separate genuine appreciation from obsession.
Exactly. Public attention can become a mirror that distorts identity. If everyone tells you that you are extraordinary, you may start believing you are untouchable. If everyone attacks you, you may start believing you are worthless.
So the danger is not only criticism. Excessive praise can also be dangerous.
Absolutely. Praise can create pressure disguised as love. When people call a teenager the next legend, they are not simply complimenting him. They are placing a historical burden on his shoulders.
That phrase, pressure disguised as love, feels very accurate. Fans may think they are supporting a young player, but sometimes they are building a cage around him.
Yes, the young player becomes trapped inside expectation. He is no longer allowed to be inconsistent, confused, tired, or ordinary. But development requires all of those things.
What do you mean by that?
Young players need space to make mistakes. They need bad games, tactical lessons, emotional setbacks, and quiet periods of growth. But fame often removes that space. Every mistake becomes evidence. Every performance becomes a referendum.
A referendum on whether he is truly special.
Exactly. And that is exhausting. Instead of learning naturally, the player has to develop under constant surveillance.
That must make the World Cup incredibly difficult for young stars. They are not only playing against defenders, they are playing against expectation, noise, comparison, and fear.
Yes, and that is why we should admire not only their technical ability, but also their emotional endurance.
Because surviving fame at a young age may be as impressive as scoring a beautiful goal.
In many ways, yes, talent gets a young player onto the stage, but character determines whether he can remain there without losing himself.
Daniel, why do people become so obsessed with young football stars? Why do fans love the idea of a teenage prodigy or a new golden boy?
I think people are attracted to possibility. A young star represents the future before it becomes complicated. He is not only a player, he is a promise. Fans project dreams onto him because his story still feels unwritten.
That is interesting. So people are not only watching what he is doing now, they are imagining what he might become.
Exactly. A young player becomes a canvas for collective imagination. People see potential, but they also see rescue. They think, maybe this is the one who will carry us. Maybe this is the one who will change everything.
That is a beautiful idea. but also a dangerous one. Because the player becomes less like a person and more like a national project.
Yes, and once a player becomes a national project, his personal life is no longer treated as fully private. People comment on his attitude, his haircut, his family, his celebrations, his interviews, even his facial expressions.
That is so unfair. A young person should be allowed to grow without every small gesture becoming public evidence.
I agree, but modern football operates inside an attention economy. Everything becomes content. A goal becomes a clip, a mistake becomes a meme, a celebration becomes a debate, a quiet expression becomes a psychological diagnosis by strangers online.
So basically, everyone becomes an expert.
Exactly. Everyone becomes a coach, a psychologist, a moral judge, and a tactical analyst at the same time.
That sounds chaotic.
It is chaotic. And for young players, that chaos can be overwhelming. They have to manage performance, public image, media pressure, sponsorship expectations, family responsibilities, and their own emotional development.
And all of that while trying to win football matches.
Precisely. We often talk about football as if it is only physical or tactical, but at the highest level, it is deeply psychological. Especially for young stars, the real challenge is not only how to play well, it is how to stay grounded when the world keeps exaggerating everything.
That reminds me of how quickly people change their opinions. After one great match, a young player is called world class. After one poor match, people say he is overrated.
That volatility is one of the cruelest parts of modern football culture. Public opinion has become extremely impatient. It wants immediate greatness, constant entertainment, and emotional certainty.
But young players are still forming their identity.
Exactly. Identity formation takes time. A young player has to ask difficult questions. Who am I without applause? Who am I after failure? Who can I trust? Am I playing for joy, for family, for money, for my country, or for the expectations of others?
Those are heavy questions for someone so young.
Very heavy. And that is why the people around young stars matter so much. Coaches, parents, agents, teammates, psychologists, and mentors can either protect a player or exploit him.
So support systems are not optional. They are essential.
Absolutely. A young player needs honest people around him. People who tell him the truth without humiliating him, protect him without controlling him, and remind him that football is part of his life, not the whole of his identity.
That last part feels important. Football is part of his life, not the whole of his identity.
Yes, because when a young player believes he is valuable only when he performs well, every mistake becomes an existential crisis.
And during the World Cup, that feeling must become even stronger.
Definitely. The World Cup magnifies everything. The camera is closer, the criticism is louder, the praise is more intoxicating, and the consequences feel historic.
So when a young star performs well at the World Cup, we should not only ask, how talented is he? We should also ask, how much pressure is he carrying?
Exactly. Because behind every brilliant young player, there may be an invisible struggle to remain calm, human, and emotionally intact.
Another thing I find fascinating is how young football stars become symbols for an entire generation. They are not only athletes, they become cultural figures.
Yes, a young player can represent much more than football. He can represent a new attitude, a new style, a new confidence, or a new version of national identity. People may see in him the energy of the future.
And sometimes that makes him even more powerful than older players, right? Because he carries the feeling of what is coming next.
Exactly. Older stars often represent legacy, experience, and memory. Young stars represent possibility, renewal, and transformation. They make people feel that the future has arrived early.
That is why a young player's first big World Cup performance can feel so electric. It is not only a good match, it feels like the beginning of a story.
Yes, and fans love beginnings. Beginnings are full of imagination. Before disappointment, before injuries, before complicated contracts, before public mistakes, there is a moment when a young player seems almost limitless.
But no one is limitless.
Exactly, and that is the painful truth. Every young star eventually discovers limitation. He may lose form, he may get injured, he may struggle emotionally, he may fail in an important match. And then the public has to decide whether it truly supports him or only loves the fantasy.
That is a strong point. Sometimes fans say they love a player, but what they really love is the version of him that never fails.
Yes, real support begins when the fantasy breaks. It is easy to celebrate a young star when he is scoring goals and smiling in highlights. It is harder to protect him when he is exhausted, criticized, or uncertain.
So maybe football culture needs more patience.
Much more patience. Development is not a straight line. A brilliant young player can have a difficult season. A quiet player can become exceptional later. A mistake at 19 should not define a person forever.
That sounds obvious, but football often forgets it.
Because football is emotional, and emotion is impatient. Fans want certainty, media wants headlines, sponsors want marketable stories, clubs want results, national teams want heroes, but young players need time.
Do you think social media has made this pressure worse?
Without question, social media has collapsed the distance between players and public opinion. In the past, criticism came through newspapers, television, or stadiums. Now it arrives instantly, directly, and endlessly.
A player can finish a match, open his phone, and immediately see thousands of opinions about his performance.
Exactly. Praise can become addictive, and criticism can become psychologically corrosive. The phone becomes both a stage and a battlefield.
That sounds exhausting.
It is, and that is why digital discipline has become part of professional discipline. Young players need to learn not only how to train their bodies, but also how to protect their attention.
Protect their attention. I like that. Because attention is where confidence lives.
Exactly. If a young player gives too much power to external noise, he may lose contact with his own rhythm, his own values, and his own joy.
And joy matters. We talk so much about pressure and success that we forget many of these players began as children who simply loved the ball.
That is maybe the most important thing to remember. Before the fame, before the cameras, before the contracts, before the national expectations, there was a child playing because the game felt magical.
And perhaps the healthiest young stars are the ones who can protect that original love while surviving the machinery around them.
Yes, they need ambition, of course, but also humility, emotional intelligence, and a stable sense of self.
So when we talk about pressure, fame, and young football stars, we are really talking about the collision between talent and attention.
Exactly. Talent opens the door, but attention changes the room.
And not every young player is ready for that room.
No, that is why we should be more careful with the words we use. Calling someone the next legend may sound exciting, but it can place an enormous emotional burden on a person who is still growing.
Maybe admiration should come with responsibility.
Beautifully said. Admiration should not become possession. Support should not become pressure. Criticism should not become cruelty.
That was a powerful conversation, Daniel. Today, we explored how young football stars experience pressure, fame, public judgment, social media, national expectations, and the difficult process of growing up in front of the world.
Exactly. And we also remembered that behind every young star, there is a human being trying to balance ambition, fear, discipline, identity, and joy.
In our next conversation, we will move into one of the most psychologically intense moments in football, the penalty shootout.
Yes, we will talk about pressure, silence, fear, technique, and why a few seconds between the ball and the goalkeeper can feel like an entire lifetime.
Thank you for listening.
See you in the next episode.
This episode was for C1 to C2 learners. Keep listening, repeat useful phrases, pay attention to advanced vocabulary, and try to use these expressions in your own conversations. The more you listen, the more natural your English will become. See you in the next episode.